remember a line of logic that went like this: beauty is truth. The New Testament somewhere says truth is God. The Basilica of St. Peter and Paul in Philadelphia is a pretty beautiful place. It's these kinds of philosophical devices, these kinds of philosophical tricks, a lot of people can anchor themselves on things like that. Time is money, but time isn't money. Beauty is truth. Well, there's sometimes beauty isn't truth. So what I'm ultimately getting at is the need to fix the theology of the church so that anybody can go into a place like that and not feel like something's wrong. And I certainly love the idea of going to church and listening to the Word of God being spoken to me. But very often, you feel like you're trapped in some kind of cultish thinking that's just false. And, you begin with, for me, you look at the miracles of Jesus. He walked on water. He healed the sick. He was resurrected. He resurrected his friend. These things are just simply violations of the laws of physics and obvious axioms of biology. They just didn't happen. Any comprehensive framework that a person might have for understanding reality would know that these things are false. But go back 1,000 years ago, and how well does anyone understand physics and chemistry, anyway? And so 1,000 years ago, you'd have some young person would read the Bible, or be trained in the Bible, and they would know the center of truth is there. They wouldn't have any way, any firm foundational way to contradict these things. And since there's so much beauty and truth within the Bible and within this religion, buildings like that, that you can't help but to embrace it as the actual absolute truth. So you can see why, Roman Catholicism, and I'm certain other religions as well, have stood such a long test of time. Because they it's certainly Roman Catholicism has a logical consistency to it. There is an all-loving God, but we suffer, yes, because you sinned or your ancestors did. And look, even you've atoned for that sin because of the infinite sacrifice of Jesus on the cross. God sent his only begotten Son, and his Son was like, said a bunch of stuff that, said a bunch of stuff and did a bunch of stuff that makes you realize that, even though I'm suffering, there must be some reason why this reality is a good reality. Up against that, I was, over the course of my life, and having access to so much more evidence than the ancient people did, people 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago did. I was able to put together another logically consistent understanding of God. And that logically consistent understanding is God is all-powerful, knowing, all-loving. God exists. But wherever those ideas contradict one another, you need to come up with a good synthesis for them. And then when you're able to fashion the best synthesis for these ideas in your mind, then you run with it. And you're always willing to amend that synthesis when you can. I've talked about this many times. If God is all loving, then he would prevent the evil in this world. If God was all powerful, he would be able to prevent the evil in this world. If God is all powerful, can he make a rock he can't lift? If God is all powerful, is he able to make dice that when he rolls them, he doesn't know what happens? If he can make it, then he's not all knowing. If he can't make it, then he's not all powerful. There's always these kinds of contradictions that arise. But these kinds of contradictions happen, in mathematics and philosophy. Kurt Gödel in mathematics proved the incompleteness theorem, the idea that there are truths that can never be proven. There was a philosophy professor at University of Penn in an old YouTube video, old, 15 years old, who made a point that Gödel's theorem is probably going to be extendable to philosophy in general. The whole idea that there's an uncountably infinite number of statements that you can make. Uncountably infinite? No, it's probably countably infinite. There's a countably infinite number of statements that you can make that can't be proven. It might be, and could be true. Can never be proven. So, I could just start making them up on the spot. You know what I mean? God is time. There you go. Might be true. Can't prove it. And it's a good way to try to understand God if you think about it that way. So in the end, I have this other vision of the nature of our all-loving God, which is He triggered our universe at the Big Bang, and He's watching it come out. Since it is a chaotic system, Stephen Wolfram, you used this statement, it's a computationally irreducible system. You can't know what happens in a system until it plays itself out. And I imagine that God would have the power to make every possible variant of emergent worlds, every possible variant. And if He changes on an emergent world in any way from its initial conditions, then it's no longer an emergent world. Do you follow? It has become something different. So he triggers this universe and every other universe. We can't see those, but we can logically conclude that they're probably there. And then the system plays itself out, and then self-awareness comes into that system. Maybe on the planet Earth, the first self-aware beings were mammals that lived in the ocean. What were the first self-aware beings? Us 100,000 years ago. We're a pretty good candidate for being the first self-aware beings on this planet. We know we exist, and we're sitting there wondering why we exist. And we came out of a system where it's like you need to kill to live, predator-prey systems, and etc. And I imagine at every step along the way, God was looking what the complexity that was made on this planet, and maybe many other places in many other universes where self-awareness was able to arise, and going like, wow, look what's going on with these guys. And is God gonna let those systems play themselves out? Well, there's a good argument to be made. Well, we know that He decided to let this one play itself out despite the list of evil things I could name. Slavery, Auschwitz, the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the genocides in Rwanda. I could go, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. But for every one of those lists of horrible things that I could come up with, I can think of many extremely beautiful things that have happened. How many people have lived long lives where they did nothing but good, throughout the course of their lives, and they raised their children and their grandchildren. They were proud to be from where they were, and they learned really good farming skills and passed those farming skills off to their kids, and they passed them off to their kids, and multiple generations of minimal conflict and people loving one another. Those things also happened on this planet. And so, I could just fashion that in my imagination. And here's God, trying to decide, here's another group of self-aware beings. Do I let them continue to exist, or do I, stop them from existing? They're going to say all kinds of things about me. God's probably looking like God came and said that you have to give money to the church in order to go to heaven, or God's, people are going to say all kinds of stuff about God, and God's going to let you say it. Do we live in a universe where people can give lies to their children for 1,000 years? Children have to deliver falsehoods about. Yes, we evidently live in such a world. It's because look at the mutual incompatibility of so many different religions that have existed for a long time. They're if this one's true, that one can't be, but yet both have existed for 1,000 years. So whatever. So I kind of figure that none of them are true. It doesn't mean that they aren't beautiful systems that engender loyalty and engender a sense of identity. There's no question that those things are also true. So, yeah, and I just going back to the basics and thinking about it, sorting out what's at the foundation of this reality can really help you to make decisions about what your politics are going to be, what you're going to do with your money, all kinds of other things. But get a firm foundation on what's going on at the foundation of reality, and then you can really start to build from that, exactly how you want to be and how you want to behave in this world. Love y'all.